What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Kingdom Crew podcast. I am your host, Josh Fann of ShowMeFootball.com, and I am joined by, as always, Michael Darcy of KC Sports Report. And together we bring you the Kingdom Crew podcast. And we got a lot to talk about today, Michael. So we put off doing an episode this week until after the Thursday night football game. So we have a game to talk about. I know we didn't get to do a preview, but it means that we just have so much more to talk about kind of in this post-game aftermath of that victory over the Denver Broncos last night, which I should mention is the 16th straight win that the Kansas City Chiefs have over the Denver Broncos. And I believe that is the longest active streak one team has over another individual team right now in the NFL. So Kansas City Chiefs own the Denver Broncos, but we already knew that. They won last night by a final score of 19-8. Michael, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one, your initial thoughts on Chiefs versus Broncos from last night, because kind of like the Vikings game, we got the win, and the Jets game. You could even say that about that one too. We got the win, but it just feels off, man. It's still a lot of issues to talk about. What do you think?
This was no exception to any game the Chiefs have played this season outside of the Chicago Bears game, even the Jacksonville game. Like, the Chiefs win, but we come out of the game feeling like they did not play a very good game offensively to win the game. But I think I kind of had a come to Jesus moment the other day where I just realized that this team is not going to blow us away on offense this year. They're going to find a way to win 11 or 12 games, try to get that one seed in the AFC, get into the playoffs, and just hope for the best. But I don't think that we are going to see this offense, flip the switch and be this, giant offense that we've seen in years prior where they put up a bunch of points. Not saying that they can't do that, but I just don't think that's really how they're built. You can even see it in the way that they attack offensively. They're not really going for the big play. They don't have the receivers for the big play. And I just think that, coming into this game, I knew it was going to be difficult because you're playing a divisional opponent on a short week at Arrowhead Stadium. The Broncos, I hate the Broncos more than I hate the Raiders. So I do think that the Chiefs came into this game obviously wanting to win, but the Broncos also came into this game with a big chip on their shoulder trying to prove something. And so this game was never going to be easy. But, man, when you just watched it, 3 series in the first half resulted, I think they were on the Chiefs' half of the field, they had a field goal, a Patrick Mahomes interception, and a fake field goal that got sniffed out and they got stopped. And they just failed to convert over and over and over again in the red zone. Nothing is new from that statement. But, Josh, I think that we're basically going to see this for the rest of the season, but I don't know how worried I am just because it works. Like, we always complain that, they barely win these games, but we've been saying this, since they've been winning Super Bowls too. It's just like they always just somehow find a way to win, even though they look horrible in the games that they win.
Yeah, I mean, this game's kind of par for the course, and that's why it's kind of hard to get too worked up over it. I did a small post game last night, and my feelings haven't changed much. It's frustrating that this team really should have put the Broncos away well before the fourth quarter, but isn't this kind of how every Broncos game for the last 3 years has gone? I mean, last year we won the Super Bowl. Both games with Denver were close, and Denver was terrible last year too. This is what the Chiefs do. I said it to you last week on our last episode, I believe, that this team will never be the sexy regular season team. They're not going to blow teams out very often. They hardly ever cover the spread in these games. This is what the Chiefs do, man. And I've seen some complaints over Matt Nagy as an offensive coordinator. I don't think this is Matt Nagy. The Chiefs had plenty of games like this with EB as offensive coordinator too. This is nothing new, guys. This is what the Chiefs do. They get in dogfights with the Denver Broncos. I mean, I think it's fair that you mentioned that this is a divisional game, and divisional games tend to be closer most of the time. And I mean, you pulled out the win versus Denver. If there's one thing that I am still concerned about, though, and why this one just feels a tad bit different than those other Broncos games, is that the offense was a problem before this game. And in the past, Denver has had a really good defense, which is what keeps them in these games versus the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes historically has struggled against the Denver Broncos defense. Like from since the beginning of his career, like Denver's defense has generally done a really good job versus Patrick Mahomes. But coming into this game, the Denver Broncos had the NFL's worst defense. And this is back-to-back weeks against a defense that was like really bad in some category. The Vikings had the league's worst pass defense heading into the Minnesota game. And in this game, Denver had the league's worst overall defense. And this is historically one of Denver's worst defenses that they've ever had. And you still could only muster one touchdown. And that's why this one just feels a little bit different, and why, yeah, I don't want to get too worked up because a win is a win. And yes, this is what the Chiefs do, and they like to screw around with mediocre teams in the regular season. And I've come to accept that. But at the same time, I'm just looking for reasons to be optimistic about the offense, because that's been the big gripe with this team is the offense. And I'm struggling to find anything to be optimistic about, Michael, with this offense.
I have a couple things. I do think situationally they're still bad. We'll talk about it. But
Yeah.
I do think that last night, seeing Travis Kelce had that monster first half where he had over 100 yards receiving, that was so huge because, I mean, we've kind of been talking about how Travis Kelce just hasn't looked right since he's, played all the games this season. I guess missed the first game, but since he's played this season. And to see him come out in the first half and kind of look like the old Travis Kelce, manipulating soft zone, just finding holes in the coverage, that was a really good sign. And I also think Rashee Rice is starting to be something, and he is getting not a heavy sample size, but they're giving him a shot. I still would like to see his receptions get up into the 7 or 8s. He only had like 4 receptions last night, but he had 4 receptions for like 72 yards. So when he catches the ball, he's making a difference and he's making an impact. And that's more than I would say Sky Moore and MVS. And I know Kadarius Toney caught a touchdown last night, but Kadarius Toney, if he's not in the red zone or the end zone, he's not really doing much for this team in terms of getting yards after the catch or putting up big numbers. So I do think that Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce were 2 offensive bright spots.
Yeah.
But I also do think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, I don't think Patrick Mahomes has been a bad quarterback, but he has looked off. He's looked weird. Just like we're not used to this kind of Patrick Mahomes.
Well, a big part of it is the receivers not getting open at a frequent enough rate. And we've talked about that plenty since the start of the season, just the receivers not getting open, and he's pressing just a little bit. And like on his interception last night, that was just a classic Mahomes trying to do a little bit too much. And he does that sometimes. Like you'd like to see him throw that ball out of bounds or throw it away out of the back of the end zone, something. But there was a guy wrapped around his ankle, and he didn't want to lose yards. He was trying to make a play, and he threw up a prayer that got picked off by Justin Simmons of the Denver Broncos. And that's just Mahomes trying to do a little too much. And it's a frustrating part of his game, something that he's done just a lot at the beginning of this year. I'm not too worried about Mahomes like going forward or anything like that. Like obvious, and I'm not saying that you're saying that, but it's just, Patrick Mahomes likes to get in these funks every once in a while. I'm not too concerned about it yet. I don't think the offense is his fault. And he was 30 of 40 last night for 306 passing yards and a touchdown. I mean, despite the red zone offense, threw for 300 yards last night. I really like that you brought up Travis Kelce kind of looking like the old Travis Kelce last night, because that was a really big boost of optimism just for me, knowing that, okay, I mean, it's not like I thought Travis Kelce was washed or anything, but just, seeing, hey, the old Travis Kelce is still here. Like this guy can still get 100 yards in any given night, because we just hadn't seen it yet this year. And he did it with a bum ankle. I mean, he was limping towards the end of that game. He's not 100%. I don't think he ever was 100% from the original injury that he sustained before the first game. So it's nice to see him go out there and do that, and having someone like that can manipulate the coverage, because I think, and a lot of people, like even in my comments and last night on the post-game show, talked about how the scheming isn't great for these wide receivers. And I agree to an extent. I think the coaching is a little bit lackluster, and they're not really helping these receivers out. You mentioned Kadarius Toney too. Kind of how if it's anything outside the red zone or whatever, like he's just been kind of ineffective. But I think that the play calling is setting up Kadarius Toney for failure because they're just giving him like these dump offs that have no chance of going anywhere and no blocking whatsoever. And they're like, all right, Kadarius Toney, do your thing, make people miss. And like he's great at doing that, but no blocking on a lot of these plays, and I don't know what they're doing with him. I would like to see him run some routes more and that sort of thing. But what I was getting to with kind of the play calling and scheming these wide receivers open, they're commonly asking these receivers to go out there and basically outrun their guy or find a way to get open against man coverage. And I think they need to be teaching them and they need to be drawing up plays that allow these guys to get somewhere that's harder for the defensive back to get to them, just like Travis Kelce, the way he does it, like against the zone coverage. Like you don't see Travis Kelce, he has not been this prolific tight end by outrunning defenders. That's not what he does.
Yeah.
He finds soft spots in coverage and he gets to a spot where he knows the defender isn't going to be there. Or by the time that they realize what he's doing, he already has made the catch and he's turning upfield for additional yards. And he did that so many times last night, and he was able to abandon his defender because he's just great at doing that, and he's great at manipulating the coverages. And I mean, Kadarius Toney is a guy I'd like to see him, or I'd like to see the Chiefs use him a little bit more like they use Travis Kelce, and say, all right, Kadarius Toney, go out there and get open, because we know Kadarius Toney can get separation. He's one of their better guys at doing that. And Rashee Rice, I mean, you talked about him and how he's really starting to come on. I've loved what I've seen from him, and he's your best wide receiver right now. He has the highest upside of anybody. I'm pretty sure MVS had like the most snaps last night at wide receiver one. Sky Moore is still seeing the field way too often, just out there getting cardio. Last night, Sky Moore had 2 catches for 22 yards. Like, okay, dude, like I'm done waiting for Sky Moore. Like, you just need to throw. And Justin Ross, even after having a few good catches against Minnesota, doesn't really see the field against Denver. I feel like at this point, Sky Moore and MVS need to kind of come off the field, and Rashee Rice and Justin Ross just need to be going out there and playing the majority of the snaps, and you live with the results, because they're by far your 2 most talented receivers. And of course, Toney is still up there too, which is why I mentioned him. Like, I feel like he should still be out there for the gadget stuff, and you still have Kadarius Toney featured in this offense. But Sky Moore and MVS, I'd kind of like them to shoo off a little bit.
Well, the weird thing is that Kadarius Toney was so effective last year as a pass catcher when he came
Yeah.
in right away. And
Yeah,
why
yeah.
has that changed? Like,
It's the play calling. It's the play calling. And I know you talked about that, and I didn't really go too in depth on it, but like, I'm ready to say it. Like, some of the coaching and some of the play calling for these receivers is doing them a disservice.
yeah, I think that is the only way to explain it, because yeah, these receivers struggle to get separation, but there's no reason why. I feel like everything they're trying to do is run either very shallow or very deep. Like, there's nothing like in between, and the creativity that they try to do is not like creative. It's just almost over the top. Like last night, they had a play where they handed the ball off to Clyde, and Clyde pitched it back to Toney, and Toney tried throwing a pass downfield to, I don't even remember who it was, but
McKinnon.
obviously it was incomplete. Like, why are we doing that? Like, out of all the things. Like, if that's how our offense has to function, when you have the best quarterback on the planet on the football field for your squad, something is not right. Something's not right.
And in the short yardage and the going forward on 4th down, multiple times when this team decided to go for it, they're taking the ball out of their best player's hands. It is maddening. It makes me want to pull my hair out that in the most important moments of the game, this team takes the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands and decides to run a freaking tight end sneak from 2 yards out on a fake punt. Like, that's so stupid. Like, if we're gonna go for it, do it with your offense. And
Yeah.
like, if you're gonna sneak it, don't do it from 2 yards out with your tight end on a stupid fake punt. That was so dumb. And then the Kadarius Toney option play where Kadarius Toney pulled it and should have just handed it off to Pacheco. Like, I like Kadarius Toney, but trusting him there to make the correct read, like he's not a quarterback. I don't like that at all. I don't like lining him up in the wildcat really in that scenario. I just think you need to give the ball to Patrick Mahomes and let him do what he does best.
Yeah, it almost seems like they've given Mecole Hardman's old role to Kadarius Toney this year, and
Mhm.
it hasn't worked out. And I don't like that because I think Kadarius Toney as a wide receiver is just significantly more talented than, how Mecole Hardman was utilized. And so
Yeah.
you're telling me that, yeah, we have some deficiencies at wide receiver and some guys that just aren't very good. I think MVS and Sky Moore, some guys that just aren't very good. But you have some options that you're just not, utilizing properly. And I think that Chiefs fans are so frustrated because we want to see what the possibility of a Justin Ross game where he comes out and catches like 4 balls for 50 yards. And, maybe that transforms your offense. Or it just seems like the Chiefs have not exhausted all of their options and they're doing the same thing over and over again and hoping that something changes where I can't believe I'm saying this, but this Chiefs offense run by Andy Reid and Matt Nagy is lacking creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's getting creative, and then there's trying to do too much or overcomplicating things. And the Chiefs are trying to do too much, and they're overcomplicating the simple stuff, like when this team needs a yard on third and
Yeah.
short. And there's creative ways to do it without doing too much. The other thing that I was going to mention, the thought just escaped my mind. Oh yeah, a lot of people after the game were saying stuff like, the Chiefs are play calling this game like, or they're calling this game like they know that they can mess around and still beat the Broncos, and that's fine and all, and I do understand that. And it definitely seemed like the play calling last night suggested the fact that this team doesn't really take the Denver Broncos all that seriously, and that's why they're kind of messing around with some of this stuff. But I just really wish they wouldn't do that. I really wish that they would just play the game, the way that they do best, and that's throwing the ball downfield. That's running the ball when you need to instead of doing all this cutesy stuff. Because here's the way that I look at it: can you beat the Broncos with a D plus game on offense? Sure, that's fine and all, but what would you rather have, Michael? Would you rather have the starters on the field for the entire game because you screwed around the entire time? Or would you rather blow the doors off the Denver Broncos and then your starters get to rest by the second half?
I'd rather have Blaine Gabbert starting at quarterback in the second half.
Yeah.
Personally.
And
I
does
don't
this team
understand.
realize that? Like, if you like, I'm not asking for the Chiefs to win with style points. That's not what I care about. What I care about is getting my stars off the field so they don't have to be out there for an entire game.
Especially a guy like Travis Kelce, who's clearly not, 100%. And he got hurt later on in the game. Like they re-aggravated that ankle. So
Yeah.
why not blow the team out in the first half and then you can pull the guys and so they can rest? Because you could have beaten this Broncos team handily if you just capitalized on all of your opportunities in the red zone. I think that's what's so frustrating is because if you can't capitalize offensively against the Denver Broncos defense, which is horrible this year, worst in the league,
Yeah.
how are you going to capitalize against a better defense? And I do think the Chiefs elevate their game, whoever they play, and they also play down to their competition. It's kind of like it goes hand in hand. They elevate to who they're going to play, but they also play down to their competition. And I think last night was definitely playing down to their competition, but also like I don't understand how this year converting is just so much harder than it's been in years prior when it shouldn't really be.
I'm sorry. My Alexa started playing out of nowhere. I don't know why that happened.
She's upset too.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
But what I agree with what you said, and this team, I feel like a lot of the times they could just put these teams away very early, and then you wouldn't have to worry so much about some of this other stuff, and then you wouldn't leave fans in doubt about this team because, yeah, this team can go out there and beat the Broncos with well below B minus game, but with the concerns we have with the offense, I'm looking for reasons to be optimistic, reasons to trust the offense. And I'm not sure I trust the offense because Patrick Allen said it best last night on the Arrowhead Addict podcast or their post game show. I was listening to it. And I kind of tried to say this last night, but he just said it better than I did. If Harrison Butker misses that last field goal, the Denver Broncos have a chance to drive down the field and tie the game.
Yeah.
Why are we like? I mean, I know it never really felt like the Broncos were going to win or that the Chiefs were going to lose or that was going to happen, but that was a possibility. And I just that's to me, that's pathetic. Like you need to be beating this team by like 20, 30 points at
Or
least. I mean,
at
this is
least
the
put them
same team.
away.
This is the same team that the Miami Dolphins scored 70 against, and I don't think I I'm just gonna say it. Some people might get mad. I don't think this team's offense is as good as the Miami Dolphins. And I know people get mad when you say that because we have Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying the Dolphins are better than quarterback, but I think the Dolphins have the better overall offense than us. Yeah, guys, I do think that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we need to put up 70 on them, but when an NFL team is putting up 70 points on the Denver Broncos and you go out there and you can't even put up 20, not even 20, like that's sad. And I get the Chiefs screwed around, but the red zone offense, it doesn't help our concerns. And it just seems like many times when this team was in the red zone, no one was open.
Yeah, that was the problem. I think we've had this problem in years prior too of like scoring. Like they can't punch it in the end zone, and we've been concerned. I do agree with your take. I think the Miami Dolphins are just better offensively. They're not better at quarterback, but their wide receiver group is significantly better.
Mhm.
And I think it's just they have a lot more offensive pieces to work with, and they get more space.
Uh, And I was gonna say too, I mean, no disrespect to Isaiah Pacheco, but the Devin Achane kid for the Dolphins,
Yeah.
absolute monster. And I don't know, I like him a lot, and I think their run game might even be better than ours. And he's not going to play against the Chiefs because he went on IR, meaning he's
Mhm.
at least going to be out through the Chiefs versus Dolphins game in Germany. But looking ahead just a little bit to that Dolphins game, that's going to be the next real big test for this team and like for this offense. Can you match the Miami Dolphins offense? Is your offense good enough to beat the Dolphins in a game? We're going to learn a lot about this team after that game. And kind of what I've said to you over the past couple of games, there's not really much to learn about this team against the defenses of the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos. If you do learn anything, it's only bad things. And unfortunately, Michael, I feel like we're only really learning bad things about this offense. And that's that they can't even put up points against mediocre competition. And I know they're winning these games, and I want to stress that. And I acknowledge that these receivers are always going to take a little bit of time, but there is the possibility that this is the offense, and the ceiling is only so high for them, and this might just be the worst offense of Patrick Mahomes' career.
It's possible, but I do think it's early. I think they're going to figure it out. I think their definition of figuring it out might be different than it has been in years prior. Like, I don't think they figure it out and magically, drop 40 points a game, but I think they figure it out to where they start averaging hopefully like 25 to 27, because with this Chiefs defense, you're going to be good enough to win games probably substantially, because the Chiefs defense has been a top 3 unit this year. And I'll stand on that. I think this Chiefs defense is elite, but
Mhm.
offensively, you're only making it harder on them when you can't convert, giving the other team's offense a short field. And it's even more miraculous that the defense has been so good when the offense has been so bad, giving them the ball with good field position. And so the Chiefs have definitely got to be better at converting on opportunities. It's the short yardage situations and the red zone. If you can fix those things, this offense will be fine. And I think part of it's going to have to be the Chiefs are going to have more trust in the wide receivers. And these wide receivers are going to have to step up. I hopefully see Rashee Rice taking a much bigger impact in this offense, because I said it last night on the Bleacher Report post game. Rashee Rice is your wide receiver 1 right now, and it's not close. Right now,
Mhm.
you need Rashee Rice to be that guy who goes out and gets 70 to 100 yards a game outside of Travis Kelce. I think he can do it. He's going to have to get the opportunity to do that. And I think if he can start really putting together a stretch of, consistently great games, we're going to see this offense take a little bit of a different form.
Yeah, if you could just have one of these guys kind of separate themselves from the pack and step up, the offense immediately gets better. And Rasheed Rice is starting to look like a guy that can make that happen. Just electric with the ball in his hands. I don't know if you saw the one play last night.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
like
On 3rd and
third
15.
and forever. He almost got it. Like the acceleration is insane from him. And he's not a burner. Like I think he ran like a 4.5 of the combine. But if you go back and look at his athletic profile, his RAS score, his 10-yard split was elite, which
Yeah.
means he can accelerate very fast. And you saw that last night, especially like on those slants. He gets the ball and just zooms right along.
Yeah, I was amazed because I was just watching it. I went back to my house to watch it for the post game show, and I watched him catch that ball and then like get to the almost the yard line to gain, and I was like, "Holy cat!" Like I didn't know he had that acceleration.
Yeah.
And the play that comes to mind is that slant that he caught over the middle of the field where he just had space and he accelerated really quickly. That's the kind of thing that I think they drew up for him. I would like to see more of that in the coming weeks.
For sure. I think we're both really excited about Rashee Rice. I think everyone's excited about Rashee Rice. Obviously, ball security and drops is something he's got to work on. I don't know if you were able to really make it out because you were at the game last night. Weren't
I was at
you?
the
Sorry.
game. I listened to I listened to the first half or the first quarter and got back by about 7 minutes left in the second quarter. So I
Okay.
watched most of the game.
Because I was going to ask if you saw the play because I believe it took place in the second quarter, maybe a little bit later, where Rashee Rice caught his first slant of the night, and it looked like the defender nearly punched it out, but Rashee
Oh
Rice
yeah.
recovered
Oh
last
yeah.
second. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that. Thank God he didn't fumble, but he's got to watch the ball security, man. That's one of the areas in which he's struggled a little bit is keeping his hands on the ball.
Yeah. And that comes with age and experience. And I think that, it's good that he has those moments where, oh shoot, like I know I have to do this better, and he didn't cough the ball up, but it was really close. But I
Hmm.
do think Rashee Rice is going to have to be the guy that steps up because we're not seeing it from anybody else. And uh,
Yeah.
one of my faults personally, I give up on players maybe a little bit too early. I've kind of given up on Sky Moore. I've just never really bought into it, so to speak. He was kind of just completely gone his rookie season. And so far this year, he hasn't done anything. So I'm kind of not completely writing him off as a bum and a bust, but I'm not really, I don't have any expectations. It's like that Frank Clark effect.
So I'm gonna pull up a tweet here, but while I'm doing that, I am kind of giving up on Sky Moore at this point. Like I'm sorry, the guy hasn't shown me anything, and it's getting kind of late for him. Like how long are we supposed to give him before we can use the B word? B word being bust. Like it's getting to that point. So my guy Carrington Harrison, I'm gonna try to find this tweet from him real quick because
Especially when you picked Sky Moore over George Pickens, and George
yeah, and we
Pickens
yeah.
is balling with Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada at calling the plays, which is terrifying if he got a good quarterback and in a good offensive system.
Hmm. So the thing with Sky Moore is I just see him out there doing like in four out of the 6 games he's done essentially nothing. And I'm like, if you're going to be anything in this league, you got to start having big performances. Like you got to go out there and do something because even last night on the 2 catches that he had, um, touches that were clearly designed for him, and that's fine that they're trying to get him the ball, because at least that means they're getting him an opportunity. But he needs to start getting open and creating targets for himself, but by getting open. But I had this tweet from Carrington Harrison. So N'Keal Harry, who is a bust, was a
Mhm.
former first round pick, I believe, by the
Yep.
New England Patriots. Um, he tweeted out their stats, N'Keal Harry versus Sky Moore through the first 21 games of their career. Through 21 games, Sky Moore has. Well, I'll start with N'Keal Harry. Through 21 games in his career, N'Keal Harry had 47 catches for 414 yards and 4 touchdowns. Through 21 career games, Sky Moore has 33 catches, 373 yards, and 1 touchdown. I don't know. I mean, like, some people are going to argue whether or not it's fair to call Sky Moore a bust, but what you can't argue is to this point, Sky Moore has done, or hasn't done, I should say, everything that a bust would do. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. And what's I mean, and N'Keal Harry was a little bit different because he was a first round draft pick and that offense didn't have anybody. So it was going to him or nobody else. So he had an opportunity to make more catches. But Sky Moore, it's not like they haven't tried to get Sky Moore involved at all, but he just has been a non-factor. I remember that tweet that you read last week where like in half of the games, he doesn't even record a catch.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I don't know. Am I wrong for saying that the guy is on the track or on track to be a bust? Like,
No, honestly, you could argue that he's one stop away from being a bust.
yeah, I don't get it, man. I really don't. But anyway, let's talk about the defense. The side of the ball that really just continues to be awesome. The pass rush had a bounce back game after a quiet couple weeks. They had 4 sacks, and they finally get to add Charles Omenihu back. He's being reinstated today by the NFL commissioner. But last night, they only allowed 82 pass yards. Russell Wilson passed for less than 100 yards. He had an awful game. Only 8 points for the Broncos, and the Chiefs defense would have pitched a shutout if not for that awful, awful roughing the passer on Mike Edwards on that blitz. I mean, he got there before the ball was even out, and he didn't even exert his full body weight on Russell Wilson. It's just a terrible call. I can't say it's the worst I've ever seen because I saw the Chris Jones roughing the passer in the 2018 AFC Championship game on Tom Brady, but that was up there with some of the worst roughing the passer calls I've ever seen. Three total takeaways for the defense. You go ahead.
I just don't know how you call roughing the passer on that, especially because if you have a defensive back charging at the quarterback, how is he going to tackle the quarterback and not apply his whole body weight on him? Because if he pulls up, then he gets hurt. So I maybe it's just a problem with the rule. I don't like the rule. I understand that there's some times where okay, that was excessive, but what is Mike Edwards supposed to do in that situation? Just stop and let Russell Wilson throw the football?
Yeah, I don't know what you want the defensive player to do. It's really unfair, and the NFL is eventually going to have to look at that. But 3 total takeaways from the defense last night. Players that I put down on my notes as having a really good standout game. Nick Bolton in his first game back, and I went on a little bit of a rant last night too on my post game about Nick Bolton because I'm so tired of going through my timeline every single week and saying Bolton sucks in coverage. Oh, Bolton is getting ragdolled down the field, blah blah blah, and it's just pointing out anytime Bolton allows a completion, everyone feels the need to point it out, even though the other linebackers haven't been good in coverage. I hear everyone talk about Drew Tranquill and how Drew Tranquill needs to be on the field over Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton is not the guy that Drew Tranquill needs to be on the field over. If anything, I would want him out there in place of Willie Gay in coverage. And then Nick Bolton can either play outside linebacker or stay in middle. But the thing is, I don't understand. Drew Tranquill hasn't really been that good in coverage this year. Everyone talks about Drew Tranquill. I like the Drew Tranquill signing. I like Drew Tranquill as a player, but my God, Chiefs fans talk about the guy like he's Ray Lewis sitting on the bench or something like that. And there was a reason they were able to get him on such a cheap deal this offseason. So I don't know. That just infuriates me. And then it was nice to see Bolton go out there and actually get an interception after everyone just craps all over his ability and coverage all the time. Jalen Watson, I thought, had a fantastic game and maybe his best game as a Chief so far with all the passes that he was batting down last night. Karlaftis batted down another pass at the line of scrimmage. And Justin Reed, one of his better games as a Chief, and he recorded his first interception.
Yeah, the defense was on fire last night. Chris Jones had a sack too. Leo Chenal. Our defense is easily the best defense Patrick Mahomes has ever had. And I just look at this unit and I don't see any weaknesses. The pass rush can get to the quarterback. And they're adding, the guy that they brought in this summer to be the opposite defensive end starting. Their linebacking core is one of the best in the NFL. You have got Leo Chenal has taken a giant step up. You added Drew Tranquill in the offseason. Bolton is playing at an all-pro level. Willie Gay, I know people rag on his coverage ability. I think Willie Gay has been really good this year. The secondary, Trent McDuffie went from a okay first-year player to playing at a Pro Bowl level in his second season. Justin Reed's looked good. Mike Edwards was a fantastic addition. L'Jarius Sneed has done his thing. Brian Cook has looked good. I don't see any holes on this defense. Could they do some things better? Yeah. But when you're looking at, what's a major hole in the deficiency, I don't see really any deficiencies of this defense. They're getting turnovers. They're getting pressure. They're stopping them in the secondary. Who have they struggled against, Josh?
Nobody really. The only stretch in which they kind of struggled was against the Jets when their tight ends were kind of chewing up the linebackers. Just just for a stretch there. But I mean, they still held them to 20 points even, and it's not like they killed them. Uh, they really haven't been bad at all. They've been dominant most of the time. And like I said, they're adding Charles Omenihu back. If there was one maybe positional weakness, the defensive line, the pass rush at times, I think has been lacking just a little bit. But you get Charles Omenihu back, who was one of the best defensive ends last year in pass rush win rate. And he also can play inside too. That was one of the areas in which the San Francisco 49ers utilized him. And so you could even line them up next to Chris Jones and have Karlaftis and FAU in there. And I just love what this Chiefs defense has.
Me too. I'm not worried. And this kind of goes back to the offense too. I think the Chiefs defense is so great. I think that they are going to give this team a great chance to go back to the Super Bowl and potentially repeat as champions. The only thing that concerns me is against a really great offense, which the Chiefs, I don't think have faced yet this year.
Mhm.
Against a really great offense, the Chiefs defense might not fold, but they might not be this great. And can the offense do enough to, match what the defense is, holding the other team to? That's going to be the biggest question. And that ultimately goes back to the offense. But I do think that this defense is great. I want to see what they can do against the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills, because if they stop those teams and hold them down, we might have a conversation that this defense is like one of the better Chiefs defenses in history.
Yeah, for sure. The Dolphins game again will be a big test for this team, and I look forward to that matchup. It's going to be really fun. But I think we kind of wrapped up all the talk on this game. We have some stuff to talk about.
Yes, we
former
do.
Chiefs have re-entered the conversation once again, and of course, oh boy, I don't even know which player to start with, because there's two of them that have been heavily rumored as being connected to the Chiefs or making a return to the Chiefs.
Start with your non-least favorite.
Mecole Hardman.
Yes.
The Jets are reportedly looking to trade or release Mecole Hardman because he can't really get on the field for them. And of course, whenever that news came out, everyone's saying, "Oh, we get bring Mecole Hardman back to KC. Like, we could use Mecole Hardman." And I don't know. I said at one point originally during the offseason, after seeing what we did at wide receiver, if this is all we were gonna do, I would have brought Hardman back for that deal maybe. At the same time, I'm not begging to bring Hardman back in the fold, because I've said it before. But if you're going to bring in a receiver at this point, since you have 7, I mean, I know Justin Watson's probably going to go on IR. I would imagine. We did not mention that he got injured last night. He had an X-ray today, and it sounds like he's going to be out for just a little bit. And then, of course, Richie James is still on IR. I have no idea when he's coming back. So that does open up room for an addition. But I feel like if you're bringing in a receiver, it's got to be someone that is a clear upgrade over what you have. And Mecole Hardman is definitely not that. And I just don't understand the logic in a guy that can't even get on the field for his own team right now is somehow the answer to your wide receiver problems.
Yeah, the answer is definitely not Mecole Hardman. I could see the idea of bringing him back because he's familiar with the system, and Andy might have more trust in him than like a Richie James. But, I don't think that he makes anything better. He's just another guy that would probably get buried in that room and not really do anything. So I think that the likelihood that Mecole Hardman comes back, it could be good just because Andy Reid knows him and there's familiarity there. But I almost wonder if Brett Veach was so okay with letting him go, because the Jets did not give him very much money, and the Chiefs definitely could have matched that, and they just decided not to.
Yeah, they could have brought him back for extremely cheap. It's not like the Jets gave him a deal that the Chiefs couldn't match if they really wanted to bring him back. I feel like Mecole Hardman also wanted to go somewhere else because he felt like he maxed out here and he wanted to try to get a bigger role elsewhere. And then, of course, Mecole, he realizes that you go elsewhere and the grass isn't really greener, because he always, if you looked at his tweets and stuff like that, he was always talking about how, oh, well, I can only do my job because I have to share the ball with Kelsey and Hill. And then Hill left, Mecole had his chance to prove himself, and he didn't really do that. He never grasped a consistent role in this offense. And then he goes to the Jets and he realizes that, yeah, other players are beating you out there too. Like, what's your excuse now? Like, Mecole Hardman's maybe just not that good of a receiver. And does he do some things well? Can he play the gadget role well? I am, yeah. And I'm a little surprised that he couldn't really get on the field for the Jets at all, even in
Yeah.
certain packages. Like, that is a little bit surprising, but I just, I, I don't, I think the Chiefs should set their aim a little bit higher than Mecole Hardman.
Yeah, and at this point, I know this might make some Chiefs fans angry, but I don't know the likelihood that the Chiefs go out and try to get a wide receiver. They got 7 of them already.
Yeah.
Unless Justin Watson's done for the year, uh, I don't really know how much they're going to go shopping for a wide receiver at the midseason point. So we might just be out of luck. And even if they did bring back Mecole Hardman, the offensive problems aren't fixed. You might get an extra 20 yards a game on end arounds and jet sweeps, but that's about it.
Yeah, and Kadarius Toney can do that just fine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really need him back. He's inconsistent. He's frustrating, and we haven't. Let's just move on to Frank Clark. Let's talk about him
The
next
fun
because he's
stuff.
the other player in the news. Yeah, he's the other player in the news. And at one point this past offseason, it looked like, Michael, that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mecole Hardman, Frank Clark were not going to be on the team. That was a real possibility. It looked like Clyde might not make it. Clyde held on somehow, but Mecole and Frank were gone. And it's like, okay, like 3 players that like I've had a strong dislike for are no longer here. And now there's an increased likelihood that all 3 of them are back on the Chiefs. And it's like, I can't escape them, Michael. I can't. Like, I
Nope.
don't know what to do anymore. Like, and Frank Clark, let's just talk about him. Like, he's been released officially. So yesterday, that's when the reports began that the Broncos were looking to trade or release him, and then they just straight up released him today. And Adam Schefter even put out a tweet shortly before we started recording saying that most league executives believe that Frank Clark will end up back on the Chiefs.
We're so back, ladies and gentlemen. We are so back.
No, it's over. It's so over. Like, I can't do this anymore. I thought I escaped Frank Clark. I escaped the Frank Clark discourse. And of course, people are debating on Twitter whether or not they should bring him back. And you want to know what I see the most, the reason to bring him back? The locker room leadership and the shark mentality and all this BS. That's really just a nice way of saying the dude sucks at rushing the passer, because he does. Like, okay, here, Frank Clark's stats for this year for the Denver Broncos: 5 games, only played in 2 of them because he's sick and hurt, and like always. 0 sacks, 2 combined tackles, 0 tackles for a loss, 0 pressure, 0 quarterback hits. He sucks. Like, why are we clamoring to bring this back? He sucks this year. He sucks for the Broncos. He's exactly who I thought he was. He's exactly who I've been saying he is for years. He's nothing without Chris Jones. You see, he goes to Denver, plays a few games for them. Denver fans hate him. They think he sucks. I mean, I saw some Denver fans tweeting about how he stole money from them, and now he's just going to go back to the Chiefs and all this. Like, he sucks.
Which is funny, because if Denver Broncos fans are getting on one individual player for sucking when that team is a dumpster fire of suck, that says something.
Yeah, like, he's terrible. Like, why are we clamoring to bring this back? And I already know what the answer is. You don't have to tell me down in the comments. People have an emotional attachment to Frank Clark. They're going to talk about the playoff stats, which I've said 1,000 times why I think the playoff stats are not really people put way too much stock in coverage sacks, cleanup sacks at the end of games. All the people that give, like, here's what happens. Chris Jones collapses the pocket. Frank Clark gets a cleanup sack. Frank Clark gets all the credit when really it was Chris Jones doing all the heavy lifting for the pass rush. That's the Frank Clark. Like, that is the epitome of Frank Clark's time in Kansas City. And as you see, he goes to a Denver defensive line where it's not like they have a Chris Jones on their defensive line, and he sucks. And I know people will say, oh, well, we have Chris Jones, so he would be playing next to Chris Jones. But my point is that he's a below average pass rusher that's going to come in here. He's going to steal snaps from players that are probably better than him. Like
Yeah.
when the team signed Charles Omenihu, and that's kind of the next point I wanted to get to is like I don't know where he fits in if he does return, and why I'm not a fan of bringing him back is you made so many investments, and at some point you got to turn these investments loose and stop. And Mecole Hardman goes into this too. At this point, that you can't keep going back to the same old players over and over and over again. Like you've got to learn to let go and start playing the guys that you brought in. Like if you're bringing in Mecole Hardman, like I don't want to see Mecole Hardman come in here and take snaps from Rice and well, maybe I do want to see him take snaps from Sky Moore. I was about to say Sky Moore and like some other players, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's just like Mecole is like what you already have. And I don't need Mecole back. But with Frank Clark, why would you keep bringing him back when, you have FAU, you have George Karlaftis. Omenihu seems like his replacement, and that's kind of like a one-for-one swap, I feel like. And so if you bring Clark back, where does he fit in? So for the longest time, Frank Clark was averaging over 70% of the defensive snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs while he was here. If he comes back, he will not be playing 70% of he shouldn't. He should not play 70% of the defensive snaps. And that's one of the reasons why I felt like he maybe signed with a different team. One thing was money. The Chiefs could not give him the deal that the Denver Broncos did. They didn't have the money for it at the time. But people were also assuming that Frank Clark wanted to come back here and be a rotational pass rusher. I think Frank Clark thinks of himself as a starter still, and he shouldn't be. And so if he does come back to Kansas City, I don't want him coming here thinking he should start because we have other guys that are quite frankly better than him. And at this point, it's a little bit different because Frank Clark, if you're getting released in the middle of the season, you really don't have the right to walk into your new team and be like, I should be starting, especially not Kansas City. We've made too many investments.
It's not only that we've made too many investments, but like you said, that ship has just sailed. It sailed a long time ago. And honestly, he was on that ship before it sailed. Like he's been in Kansas City probably way longer than he should have been. And yeah, he got a Super Bowl last year out of it, but he should not have been on that team. It worked out, but it should not have worked out. And so he should almost be like counting his blessings that it did happen. Unfortunately, Josh, this move makes too much sense for the Chiefs to not do it. I do think that they're going to have to make a decision on that defensive line. Like, who are they going to get rid of? We're looking at it right now. They got George Karlaftis, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. You're just adding back Charles Omenihu. Who would they cut? Malik Herring? I just don't know who they would
Malik
get
Herring
rid
actually
of.
had a good game last night, too.
He did. And you can't take Mike Dana off the field right now. So who exactly is going to get his snaps decreased to bring Frank Clark back into the mix? Now,
a horrible pass rusher, 0 pressures, 0 sacks, 0 quarterback. Like he sucks.
I can put up that stat line. And I will go in for a lot less money too. But I do also think that we kind of have to view the Chris Jones situation as part of this, that the Chiefs might think, okay, to make Chris Jones happy, to, really maybe try to incentivize him to sign a long-term deal next year. Maybe they say, hey, you know what, Frank, come back, play with your buddy Chris. And Chris, maybe we'll remember that during negotiation talks or something like that, at least we tried to make you happy, Chris.
Yeah.
Because Chris Jones definitely would advocate for Frank Clark being on this defense. Yeah. And honestly, it just sucks because he's been just such a non-factor. But I just wonder, like, it's only if the Chiefs have to make a move to get rid of somebody to bring Clark in. That's the thing I'm not a fan of. And also, like you said, is Frank Clark coming in at midseason with the expectation of being a starter? He should not expect that. He should expect, to not be a healthy scratch every week. That could be an expectation. But even then, like, I don't think that Frank Clark is in a leveraged position to demand anything. And if he does make his way back on this team, he has to be coming off of the bench, giving you something on like first down and then coming off the field.
Yeah, very reduced role than what he's used to from being in Kansas City in the past. And I want to hit on one more time, just kind of people saying that we should bring him in for like the locker room leadership and all that, like the development of FAU and stuff like that. I don't see the need for that. Like, I feel like that's overblown. I feel like that's the stuff you say about a player when he's not very good at what he's
Yeah.
supposed to be doing. Like, oh, he's a great locker room guy. You always hear that. Like, it's kind of hard to not be a good locker room guy. And like, these are NFL players. They don't need Frank Clark to come in and talk trash and stuff to get him hyped up at all. Like they don't need Frank Clark to come in and be like they have Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a great leader. I have all the faith in the world in Chris Jones, and the pass rush has been just fine without Frank Clark. And I don't want him coming in and eating up snaps, going out there and trying to do his stupid bull rush or run around the tackle that
The
like he does
spin
50
move.
times a game easier. Yeah, and the stupid overused spin move. Like I don't want to see that again. Like I'm so tired of the Frank Clark stuff, and I'm tired of Chiefs fans wanting to bring back the same players that are past their expiration date. This team.
Yeah, it sucks. But out of all, I guess, two of the players we talked about, I could see Frank Clark coming back over Mecole Hardman. I really could because
Oh yeah, like I see I definitely see the Chiefs bringing back Frank Clark. I just personally wouldn't do it. I don't want them to, but I fear that's what's going to happen.
oh yeah,
Because
I don't want him back either.
if I had to guess, he's probably going to pass through waivers and he's going to be back on his way to Kansas City. I'm praying that another team picks him up off waivers. I should say that.
I don't know any NFL team that's clamoring for a zero pressure, zero sack, zero.
That's what I'm saying. What are we doing? What are we doing, Chiefs fans? This guy sucks.
You know that me and
Why do
Frank
you want
Clark
to bring
have
him
the same
back?
stat line this year?
And here's the other thing. You know how these coaches operate. Frank Clark's going to come back here. He's going to start playing 50% of the snaps, just like how for years we said with Dan Sorensen, oh, he'd be a good third safety. And then he starts over Juan Thornhill all of a sudden. Like, because these coaches, they love certain players. They love Frank Clark. And I just know if he came back here, he'd play a lot more snaps than he should too. He'd come back that first week. You see the snap counts after the game. What? Frank Clark, 50% of the snaps in his first week back? Like, what are we doing? He's not good. I don't want to see him back. I don't want that.
No. But unfortunately, I think that he might already be on the plane to Kansas City. Who knows?
Oh, my God. Yeah. And then in classic Frank Clark fashion, he missed last night's game. He missed his Chiefs homecoming with a stomach illness again.
Well, yeah. I think he's got some condition.
He does. But, I mean, that makes him a liability.
Yeah. No, that's correct. And yeah, I don't really know what he brings. I know what he brings. It brings nothing. he just brings nothing.
I see stuff about like him like mentoring Karlaftis and how he was a big influence on Karlaftis and he could do the same for FAU. Well, what is he teaching them? How to be a bad pass rusher?
Also, what is George supposed to say? Yeah, he sucks. He was a terrible. Like, I'm sure he's a good dude, but like, what is George supposed to say?
George trained with Tamba Hali this offseason, if I remember correctly. I would credit Tamba Hali more for whatever George Karlaftis does this year, more than I ever would Frank Clark. Like, what do you think Frank Clark is teaching these guys? How to talk trash and then get 0 sacks?
Yeah, or I was gonna say a gun charge joke, but we'll keep that one in the chamber. But yeah, there we go. I didn't even mean to do that one, but I definitely think that Frank Clark, while he offers little to nothing, will probably be back on this team in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and then we'll have to hear how he's a playoff monster and he's great for the locker room, which is just a nice way to say that he sucks at rushing the passer.
Yeah. Man, what a time to be alive. It's 2023 and we're talking about Frank Clark being potentially back.
Not a good time to be alive.
Oh, no, I didn't say it was a good time. I just said, what a time.
I thought I was done. Like, I still got to deal with Clyde. I got to deal with Clyde getting touches on offense still, and then they want to bring Frank Clark back in the fold. Does this team want to kill me?
Yeah, the blood pressure is going to spike. It's going to be bad, especially when we see the spin move get dejected very quickly, or that try that up and under move where he just gets shoved to the ground. It's like, okay,
I threw a party. I threw a celebration. Right here on this channel when we cut him last year, and then it's like, what, 6 months later, he's back on the team.
It wasn't even a full calendar year, and he's almost back.
These guys just come crawling back to the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's because the Chiefs make them. It's literally because the Chiefs make them.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, you look around the league, Mecole Hardman with his new team, Juju Smith-Schuster with his new team, Frank Clark with his new team, like all busts. They've all been busts for their new teams.
Well, and I'm not trying to say that he's a bust because he's getting older too, but like sometimes I just forget Tyrann Mathieu still plays football. Like he had a pick six the other day, and so good for him, but like the drop off was crazy.
Yeah. And I always see like these safety ranking lists come out, and like Tyrann Mathieu still somehow making people's top fives. And it's like Tyrann Mathieu is just living off name value at this point because he is like not even a top 10 safety anymore.
No. Yeah. It's funny when you look back at it, some of the financial decisions that Brett Veach has made, like, avoiding paying a defensive end like Chandler Jones or Randy Gregory and avoiding paying Tyrann Mathieu. They've definitely made questionable decisions, like when they traded and paid Frank Clark. But like overall, there's some decisions that Brett Veach has missed out on, like not paying a safety a bunch of money and just getting Justin Reed. It's worked out for the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys that definitely I think have higher upside, like Justin Reed. Like I don't think Justin Reed will ever be on like the level of Tyrann Mathieu in his career, like an all-pro level safety. But the difference in athleticism and the things you can do with him are just, it was better than keeping an aging Tyrann Mathieu. So yeah, you got to give credit to Brett Veach for letting these guys go at right around the right time. It seems like, I mean, Orlando Brown with the Bengals kind of having a rough time right now. So
yeah.
Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. It was a good episode. We got to talk about the
was.
Broncos game. We talked about Frank Clark, Mecole Hardman. I feel like I'm stuck in 2022.
It felt like a very 2022 episode.
Yeah, really. I mean, oh my God.
Kind of did.
We'll go ahead and wrap it up there, though, guys. So, yeah, I mean, Chiefs take on the Chargers next week. They do have a little bit of a mini bye, though. They get 10 days of rest since they played the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. So that'll be nice, especially for Travis Kelce and his ankle and any other injuries that this team is dealing with. So we'll definitely be back sometime next week to film another Kingdom Crew and probably preview the Los Angeles Chargers game. But
yes,
we'll go ahead and sign off there. But before I do that, Michael, why don't you go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report, Instagram and Twitter at the Michael Darcy. Check out the stuff on Bleacher Report. It's on the Bleacher Report mobile app, but it's also just on the YouTube. So just go to KC Sports Report for more information.
And all that stuff will be linked in the description as always. As for me, subscribe to me on YouTube, Show Me Football. You can also check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com for more. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, you can always check out the Kingdom Crew podcast on Spotify or any of those listening platforms. We appreciate you all for tuning in. But we will see you in the next one. Like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And go Chiefs.